Parish orphans and retrogrades. I have a most important show for you today regarding the news that is broken out of the final week of the synod. Really the synod's over because the 5 modules of the synod were all completed over last weekend. So this is the General Assembly preparatory for next year's synod. This is really kind of the beginning of the interregnum period between synods, but technically they wrap up this weekend. On Tuesday, news broke that there was this document out there. And let me read what the document circulated by Francis was called. Women Can't Become Priests or Modern Deacons, from Catholic News Agency. Pope Francis reaffirmed the impossibility of women becoming priests or even modern church deacons in an interview for a book released Tuesday in Italy. The question of whether some women in the early church were deaconesses or another kind of collaborator with the bishops is not irrelevant because holy orders is reserved for men, the Pope said. The Pope's answers to questions about women's ordination comes after 2.5 weeks of debating this question over the course of the Synod on Synodality. This is kind of the first real session of the Synod on Synodality this October. There's another session of the Synod on Synodality planned for next October. Today I'm going to tell you why those Pope Francis fans, we're all Pope Francis fans insofar as we love the Pope, but this Pope, who's proven himself to be trouble, I'm gonna show you why Pope Francis fans in that sense are spiking the football in the end zone, ultimately to a loss. And I'm going to show you how Francis has used double synods in the past to run a very, very, very standard formula, what's become standard for him. It all goes back to 2014-2015 double synod on the family, like Ed Penton has said before. I'll show you that the first synod is always used to introduce a revolutionary question. I'm going to play for you what I've adverted to many times, Cardinal Walter Casper. In between 2 synods, step 2, in that interregnum period, saying, no, we're not doing the revolutionary change. I exaggerated when I said before and during the first synod that Pope Francis is going to give communion to the civilly divorced and remarried. And then step 3, you get the second synod together with the post-synodal document, the exhortation, where the revolutionary change gets pushed through in fact. That's what happened at 2014-2015. I'll prove it to you now. We are now in the, for all intents and purposes, the interregnum period because we're at the General Assembly. The Churchly minority have been done meeting since last weekend where they did the 5 modules over the first 2.5 weeks. That's done now. So we are at that second phase where Francis scales back the rhetoric. Somehow and for some reason this works, where he gives a victory to Pope-splainers. He did it in summer of 2015 between the 2014 and 2015 synods, right before the 2015 synod began. I'm going to play you those clips that I'm always referring to, where he said, yeah, basically I don't favor Cardinal Casper's proposals, even though I was saying I did in 2014 at the first synod. He's in that phase now. I told you he would do this. I'll play a clip of me back in September telling you 4 days before the synod began that Pope Francis would do this. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. I called it out. It's not because I'm Nostradamus. It's because Francis is very formulaic. Now, if you want to support this channel, you know that I want to support you, Parish Orphans and Retrogrades. We've showed that under 50% of our viewers are subscribed to the channel. Please click the subscribe button. I'm begging you, please subscribe if you watch these videos even semi-regularly. Like the video, leave a comment. This one's going to get a lot of debate. If you want to support the channel also, what you should do is take me up on all the free classes and services we offer. There are 2 coming up in November now. The most important work of Western philosophy for non-philosophers, for philosophy muggles, if you will, to study, common, reasonably intelligent Catholic adults, is Aristotle's Ethics. I've taught this class before, and I'm teaching it again live. It's always up for purchase, the modules where you go through it on your own. But people like it live. We want to fill the ranks. We want 500 people seated in this ethics class. It begins Wednesday, November the 8th at 5. For my supporters on Locals and Subscribestar, I have a 30 to 45 minute 6:30 CST LOTR reading book club that meets every Wednesday. This means for the hour and a half, 75 minutes before that, 5 p.m. CST on Wednesdays, beginning November the 8th, I will be going through the 10 books of Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics with you. It is the most important book for you to read for happiness, for a good life. Thomas Aquinas basically baptized the book, and Leo XIII basically baptized Thomas Aquinas' baptism of the book. So the Thomistic Pope says that Thomas was right. This is basically the most important natural ethics you could ever study as a Catholic. November the 8th, it's absolutely free. We'll take unrelated donations for we always take unrelated donations, but it's absolutely free for those who just feel they need this course. They need their family to take it. A mom, a dad, together with teenagers in the family should study this course, go through, read a chapter a week in the 10-chapter Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle, the easiest but the most profound and most valuable work of Western philosophy. That's one way you can enrich your family. It's a life changer, most important book for you to read. Yes, the Bible, but Nicomachean Ethics is the most of a life changer along natural grounds. The Bible is the most important book you can read along supernatural grounds. Nicomachean Ethics, the most important book for a young adult to an old adult, any adult human being to read to become holy and happy the natural way. Now, beginning 8 days later is something very, very special that I want to announce with frills right now. We've gotten lots and lots of requests for this. The Ask Your Husband Book Club, where Steph will be making, this is meeting every 2 weeks, and it's on Thursdays. And she designed it to avoid the major holidays. Whereas the ethics course is a crash course, a holiday crash course, Retrograde's crash course in the ethics that should be done by New Year's. The Ask Your Husband Book Club will meet every 2 weeks. The book, Ask Your Husband, is 8 chapters long. She will make a presentation together with women's questions, wives' questions about, okay, how do I apply this book to my life? It's not that abstract. It's not hard to see. But you will get to interact with Steph, who will be running this book club, each of the 8 chapters in 8 weeks that will take place every 2 weeks. That means she'll be doing this thing basically for 4 months. That too is absolutely free, aside from any unrelated donations you want to make to our family. So these are 2 great opportunities to get invaluable content online. We're making it totally free for those who can't afford to make an unrelated donation. That's the best way to support this channel right now in time. Support your family by going to Real Estate for Life and getting from your blue state to a red state today. That is realestateforlife.org. That's you supporting your own family. And we're very excited about these 2 classes. I haven't run an Aristotle class in almost 3 years, 2.5 years or something. Steph's never done an Ask Your Husband book club, right?
Never. Nope, this is the first one.
First one. People have asked. It feels like 1,000 women have asked her to do this. It might not be a full 1,000, but it feels like it.
I have links for both classes in chat right now if they want to check that out.
All right, so the Pope-splainers are spiking the football in the end zone today, yesterday, the day before, because of this news, I guess, of a book, Women Can't Become Priests or Modern Deacons. Well, how did I know enough to say this on September the 30th? Well, I did not know about this book that was going to be released in the First Synod. I had no clue. I knew that something like that would be coming down the pike. Some announcement at the end of this synod or sometime before the next October synod would be coming down the pike that would be the equivalent of Cardinal Casper saying between the 2014-2015 synods, I'm out of fashion. No, the Pope has decided against me. I know that's how Martini and the St. Gallen Mafia taught to do things. But I did not know this book would come out. I didn't know it would be technically while this synod was still going, even though it's the General Assembly. But listen to what I said 4 days before this synod began. And this is as direct as you can get what I'm saying here.
Media hype? It's all media hype. Francis said in that Disney video that he did, he worked on a little video for Disney where he was interviewed by 8 or 9 South American youths. And he robustly defended women can't be ordained. And he's robustly defended certain LMNOPQRST type ideologies as devilish and deuced, diabolical. And he has at times said that those first 2 letters, under a different heading, the first 2 letters of LMNOP.
LNG. So that's where I say.
Also a wicked ideology. If you know my work, I'm talking now not just about the third wave of dysphorics, but the second wave of dysphorics as well. And by saying that women can't be part of the ordained class, clerics, deacons, he's also saying strong pro-Western civilization, pro-church things about the first iteration of the dysphorics.
Great, right?
If you know the case for patriarchy, you know what I'm talking about. There are 3 waves of the dysphorics. First was feminism. Second was 2 or 3 of those letters, LMNOP.
LNG.
The third one is the final letter.
T.
So I have to codify this way. So my young friends who are in the church, like even my young friend Pine Sap, who does great work, and I encourage all you to check out Pine Sap's streams and his Twitter account. It's good work. But I say, look, man, you weren't paying attention in 2014 and 2015 when Francis came into office in the 2013. The first synod was the extraordinary synod on the family in 2014. I watched him daily, closely. I was a big 1 Peter 5 reader at that point. I watched him say, there's going to be no divorce, remarried, communion, resolution out of these synods. And everyone said, well, then why is this the only thing you're talking about at the October 2014 Extraordinary Family Synod? He said, don't worry about that. We let him talk, but it will not happen. He said that time after time after time. In between the 2014 and the 2015 Synod, which was the ordinary version of the Family Synod, both were in October of the 2 relative consecutive years. Toward the end of summer, he had Cardinal Casper, the leader of the Casper agenda, or you might call it the St. Gallen Mafia agenda, who was pushing for communion for divorced and civilly remarrieds, go on Raymond Arroyo's show, the world over, and run a little psyop, say to the world, Francis kind of favored my view, the Casper option, to give communion to divorced remarrieds for a while, but I fell out. It's not going to happen in the upcoming synod in 3 months. He said that in late summer of 2015. What happened in October? What they did then is a precursor to what's going on today, right now, as they're preparing 4 days before the 2023 synod.
This
what
is in September.
They turned out all the lights ideologically. They turned off all the mics. They said they weren't going to allow reporters in or out to have any kind of serious access to the information. They changed the rules daily at that second family synod, 3 months after Casper said he was out. They changed the rules so no one knew what was going on in October of 2015. Reporters couldn't get access to nearly the info they could a year before, which is what Francis has insinuated is going to happen starting Wednesday. They gave anonymity to lots of the synod speakers. And it turns out Casper, proxy for Francis, had lied. He wasn't out at all. Because all they talked about at that 2015 synod turned out to be giving communion to the divorced and civilly remarried. 6 months after.
Okay. So, I told you before this synod began that there would be a ruse run like, I didn't know it would be so direct, like the document that was released on Tuesday. I told you that. Do we have those Casper, we have those Casper clips?
Yeah.
The one on left first?
This one?
Yeah, note the date. This is June the 4th, 2015. I was watching with my good friend Joseph. Joseph, if you're watching today, what's up, bud? I have to give you a call. We watched this at your house. Cardinal Casper of the St. Gallen Mafia, he'd been trying to get divorce to be okay, divorce for adulterers, communion for the divorced and remarried adulterers since I was born, since the early 80s. And he's one of the leaders of the St. Gallen Mafia. Raymond Arroyo has him on his show. Holy cow, this is great. We watched it at his house. We were glued to the television. We were actually swimming outside because it was June with our families. We came in to watch this thing live. What Casper said shocked us. It was a couple months before the second family synod would begin. Casper, the previous year in 2014, had been everywhere, like I said in this clip I just played you from about a month ago. Casper been everywhere saying Francis favors communion for the divorced and civilly remarried. Just as all of Gresh and Hollerish at this synod are saying Francis favors female deacons in some form. All of the women there are saying Francis loves this. Francis favors the LMNOP changes and SS Union blessings. So now at this interview, in between synods, Casper comes out and says this on June the 4th, 2015. This is the first time I've played it on this channel, at least in a long time. I refer to it all the time. I figured I'd dig it up for you. I was going to do this show at like noon, but it took me a long time to clip this whole thing up. Let's play it, and you will see exactly why there will be women deacons. Let's go for it.
Your Eminence, for decades, you have been arguing that there needs to be mercy extended to divorced and remarried Catholics in the form of communion, granting them communion under certain cases. Do you feel you're close to achieving that end now, with the synod coming and where the Holy Father is?
This I do not know, because I left it open. I did not want to anticipate the synod and the decision of the Holy Father, and therefore it's not a firm proposal, there are questions. And I get a lot of agreements, but also a lot of critiques, and there is attention there. Now I propose to those who prepare the synod to prepare a text which can get the agreement of the whole, as the great majority. It's the same method also we had in the council.
So your proposal was put forward, and it was controversial.
Did you hear what he said? I put forward a text where we could agree with language such that is what he means, that we could agree with everyone at the council, meaning even the conservatives. Okay, we're going to play in a second, but he said we did the exact same thing at Vatican II. Weaponized ambiguity. We wrote stuff into the text so that we could get the signature of all the signatories, not just the leftist radicals. He said we did the same thing at the council. And he's like, this is what we did there. Now listen to what Arroyo asked. Can you go back 2 seconds? Arroyo asks another question.
I'll try again.
Okay.
It's the same method also we had in the council.
So your proposal was put forward, and it was controversial.
Of course it was.
But you have said, and I'm quoting you, the Pope approved of your proposal. You said clearly this is what he wants. Do you agree with that still? And are you speaking for the Pope?
No, of course I spoke beforehand with the Pope. It is not a conference at academic realm, it's an important issue before the cardinals, and he was in favor to open the debate, but not a certain proposal.
Backpedaling.
I did ask him what he wants, but he wanted to touch the problem and to open the debate. This he wanted, and this I did. But then I had the impression he was, more or less he agreed what he said. It was to the cardinals, it was not against his opinion, but I cannot say that I have now made the proposal of the Pope.
No, because at the time of the synod, I know there was some reportage where you were saying that you were speaking for the Pope and you understood his mind. Was that an exaggeration, or do you stand
That's
by
an
it?
exaggeration. I was expressing his mind in the sense that he wanted debate about all these problems. He's for openness and for frankness, and he says it does not help to suppress the questions.
I want to explore this a little bit, just so the audience fully understands what is at stake here and what the proposal that we're talking about. It really is a proposal to allow divorced and remarried Catholics to return to the sacraments with some haste, correct?
Okay, we're going to play the second and third clip in a sec, but let me explain what's going on. This is between those synods where Francis initially said, I like the idea of communion for the divorced and remarried. And he had Cardinal Casper, this guy, who'd been trying to do it for 30 years, one of the leaders of the St. Gallen Mafia. Before the synod opened, he said, everyone sit down, you have to listen to this presentation by Cardinal Casper. And he presented it favorably. But and Cardinal Casper was running interference at that time, early 2014, all through the 2014 synod, saying, Francis agrees with me. He favors my proposal. he did and does. That ended up being true. But Francis had planned, because you have to understand, he is a liar. Francis was diverting. Casper was saying, truly, Francis agrees with him. Francis was going out there and he's like, this is how weaponized ambiguity and incrementalism works. Francis was saying, I'm not a man of the left. I don't necessarily favor Casper's proposal. I want to study it, which is exactly what's happening at this synod, 23 and 24, with women deacons. He's saying, and it happened in the Amazon synod in 19, I want to study it only. Why do you want to study something if it's impracticable? So he's having at least another guy or himself, or sometimes in this 23-24 synod, it's himself debating with himself, Francis, saying, yes, I want to do it. No, I don't want to do it. Creating that confusion. Okay? So the Pope-splainers, after Casper gave this interview, I'm going to play the other two clips from it, where he said, oh, I exaggerated. Francis did not agree with me. Sorry, I shouldn't have exaggerated. That wasn't good to do, whatever. He'll say some more in a second. He admits that he was lying. The Pope-splainers then, I should have Steve Skojic on to talk about it, though he's not Catholic anymore or whatever he is. But they were yelling at Skojic and 1 Peter 5. They're like, see, Francis is faithful. My buddies, who I referred to in the last show I did, were saying, see, Francis is faithful. And I said, no, I think this is weaponized ambiguity. Now, I had nothing to point to then, because this was Francis's first rodeo in 2014, 2015. But I still suspected I was baffled by it. Now we know this is literally the plan. I'll read you my tweet from earlier today. Can we do the top Casper one now?
Sure. Let me get that ready.
You do understand, when a churchman like yourself, a theologian, an esteemed international figure, a curial official, says, here is my proposal, and the Pope agrees with me.
Well, I did not say
that does cause some... Well, you did say... I mean, you did say... and the quote is, clearly this is what he wants, and the Pope has approved of my proposal. Those are the quotes from the time.
It's a direct quote.
Proposal. The Pope wanted that I put the question, and afterwards, in a general way, before all the cardinals, he expressed his satisfaction with my talk, but he ended not in the special question. Also, I would not say he proved his proposal. No.
See what he's saying? You can't even keep up. We're going to play the third clip in a second. These might be out of order from this 20-minute interview that Arroyo did. I love Arroyo, by the way. He's a great guy behind the scenes, too. We talk occasionally. He's saying yes, but no, but maybe, but yes, but no, but maybe. And the takeaway principle, you could ask Arroyo himself, the takeaway from this episode, landmark episode of Arroyo's show. Arroyo is a far-right Catholic conservative like me. Far right. New Orleans boy. Very far right. Further right than he even says, I think, on his show, which says a lot. He will vouchsafe. People were yelling at him. You know what this means. He keeps holding Casper's feet to the fire in this interview. Everyone was confused here when Casper said, no, I exaggerated. Francis wasn't with me all along. And then Arroyo, too, who's a sharp dude, was like, but then we don't understand. There seems to be a change on the Pope's part. He used to be with you. He's not now. You were saying he was with you. He's not now. The truth ended up being, remember, post Amoris Laetitia, Casper was lying. The Pope was lying to whatever extent that either of them affirmed that the Pope was against Cardinal Casper. The Pope was with him all along. Amoris Laetitia is the Sankt Gallen Mafia's Casper plan to get communion to the divorced and civilly remarried. Repeat. Amoris Laetitia was the Sankt Gallen plan, Casper's plan for communion for the divorced and remarried. It's history. It's not debatable. He put that Amoris Laetitia into the Acta Apostolicae Sedis 6 months later, and he responded in a dubia at the beginning of this synod. It's done deal. Signed, sealed, delivered. He reformed the irreformable magisterium. It's material heresy. It can't be changed. It can't be gone back on now. We might find out later that Francis is not Pope. That's what I'm hoping. We might find that out. Or we'll have to correct this huge heresy. The next pope will have to do it. But the point is, Casper here between synods lied, just as the pope now is lying between the close of the small group discussions at this synod and the opening of the group discussions at next synod. He's following the exact St. Gallen formula of running interference, saying, yes, I will. No, I won't. Yes, I will. No, I won't. You know why? Do you know why they do that? Do you know why pedagogues and demagogues do that? Dishonest pedagogues and really immoral demagogues do that. Well, why? Normal people look at that and they're like, well, if he's going to admit it anyway,
when a churchman like yourself,
if he's going to admit that,
international figure,
look, he admits now that Amoris Laetitia means communion for the divorced and civilly remarried anyway. So why did he run all this interference favoring Casper, but saying maybe not in 2014? Then in 2015, Casper says, no, he definitely doesn't. But then Arroyo's like, but he did. And then Casper's like, yeah, he kind of did, but I mainly exaggerated. You're confusing normies. A normie is marked by, yes, a lower intellectual capacity than elites in society, than leaders in society, but also a smaller will. Elites, good and bad elites, have magnanimous wills. That means large souls, larger intellects, larger wills. That means they're willing to stick with a problem. Have you ever noticed how really smart people don't keep normal hours? Okay, have you ever noticed how really mediocre midwits are like, well, I have to go to bed now. The routine tomorrow, blah blah. They won't stick with the problem. You're like, no, we have to stick with this. This is a very important apore. Normies, I'm not insulting anyone out there who has a very regular bedtime. Normies are normies because they're most people. Some of them are smart in one or two other capacities. But they get tired physically easier. They keep more regular hours. And they get tired of vexing aporetic questions more. So your every normie friend you have, if you try to talk to him about this and you walk through, I mean, it's this pretty simple formula. Normies will talk about it like it's tortuous and impossibly labyrinthine. It's a little labyrinthine.
I don't have time for this.
I don't have time for I got to go to bed. I got real life. They always start throwing, well, I live real life too, man. But this shit matters, bro. And it's not that impossible. 2014 and 2013, Francis said, I want to give Cardinal Casper a hearing. I want to give him a hearing for this crazy plan he's had to get communion to the divorced and civilly remarrieds. And he said, I don't know if I favor it. But then Casper in 2014 was saying he does favor it. And Casper didn't seem like he was lying. And then in 2015, in between the synods, before the October 2015 synod started, they always go in October, Francis tasked Casper with, hey, go on Arroyo, talk to all the right-wing Catholics in America, the main opposition to communion for the divorced and civilly remarried, and tell them all, no, you're out of favor. Tell them you exaggerated, that I'm not with you and that I never have been. Tell them that, Cardinal Casper. And he did. Then they had the 2015 synod, and it looked like they were back at their hijinks. And then we waited for 6 months for the post-synodal apostolic exhortation. Amoris comes out, and it turned out Casper had been right all along, and Francis had favored him all along, and then they stuck that into the magisterium, saying communion for the divorced and civilly remarried. Well, parish orphans and retrogrades, that's what's afoot right now. We're now in between the meeting of the small groups, 2023. That's done. That ended this weekend. So what did they do? They rolled out. Yes, it's still the last week of the synod, but it's the General Assembly now. It's not important. No discussions will be formed here. So what did they do? They rolled out this document as planned. I told you it was all pre-planned on Tuesday, saying, no, Francis doesn't like the idea of modern deacons. Now I'm going to address that as well. Can you play the last Casper clip on the bottom right, please?
Yeah, let me see if I can make this bigger. Oh, here we go.
Do you see a transition here? It seemed early on, during the synod, after the synod, really up until about December or January, the Holy Father, in all of his interviews, he seemed to be very supportive of your proposal, making those same arguments and some. Now something has happened. He now seems to be turning away, questioning, and putting distance between your proposal and himself?
I do not know. I did not speak with him, and he did not speak with me. But
What are you hearing?
Well, it's free. It's free, and I'm totally free. I do not know what he wants. I do not know.
As you look at the situation now, as you see the African bishops, the Polish bishops, the United States bishops saying there shouldn't be a change in either practice or doctrine. You have people writing, signing petitions, begging the church fathers not to make any changes. Are you still confident that that might happen?
Well, it's one side, but there are many petitions also in the other sense, and I know many cardinals, I know many bishops who are more on my side.
You think there's more on your side now?
I do not know. I do not know. And my suggestion is to find now a formula where the great majority can adhere.
Are you working on that formula?
No.
Okay. Isn't that wild to watch? With the luxury of history behind us, this whole... What you need to take away, parish orphans and retrogrades, even given the epistemic humility that I'm constantly preaching, I don't know if Francis is Pope. I haven't weighed in there. Aside from saying it's not a silly suggestion to say he might not be Pope. He totally might not be. And that would be great. He's really bad. But isn't it wild? Because when you see that and you go 2014, he said this. Then he said 2015, he said X in 2014. Then he said X prime, the opposite in 2015. Then 2016, he's back to X. It was all prearranged the way Cardinal Sarah and the Africans were saying, this is all fake. This is all fake news. The African bishops were saying that. It's all fake. The synodality process is just WEF. It's a fake discussion. They were going to do communion for the divorced and civilly remarried all along. Earlier in 2014, one of the good guys, Cardinal Brandmüller, had said, this is what they're going to do. It'll be the first step of the St. Gallen papacy. Communion for the divorced and civilly remarried. Sexual revolution. Then they'll do female deacons. Cardinal Brandmüller said that in 2014. I know you hear me say it all the time, but let it sink in. What really is sinking in, therefore, is not that I'm making correct calls or that anyone's making correct calls, let's say on the opposite side. They called it aptly that Francis was going to roll out this document on Tuesday saying, no, there can't be modern deaconesses. What the hell's a modern deacon, by the way? That's all he rejected. I'll play another thing that I more specifically called what this means there won't be modern deacons. There will be an even more version, a third version of a deacon that women can be. What you're really seeing is that it's all theater. Casper here backs off a little bit less than I remembered because he's not quite the liar that Francis is. Okay? Francis is the master shadow player here. So I think what happened is he tasked him, go on the main right-wing show on TV in America, our main opposition to communion for the divorced and civilly remarried, and say that you were wrong about me. And Casper's like, one, it's intellectual pride because Casper's got an enormous intellect. He's a very smart man. Enormous Teutonic intellect. You could tell. Processing speed. This guy's IQ 130. Fast dude. He has a big ego. You could tell that. He didn't want to even temporarily for the middle position say, I was wrong. But you could tell Francis told him to go do this. Say you're out of favor with me. He didn't want to. But he did it. And he backed off a little less than I thought at the time. At the time, I was kind of shocked. Then in 2016, that interview just makes no sense now. If you believe that it's a normal organic process unfolding in time. It only makes sense if you believe what the truth is, the truth being that this is all fake news. We have the double synod process, 2014, 2015, or in this case, 2023, 2024. We'll get all the normies used to hearing about, will there be deaconesses or not? Yes or no? And all these, farmers and people that go to bed early and haven't gone to bed a minute late past the bedtime like a 4-year-old, in decades, that are just, this is how a lot of people live. I have 5 minutes to discuss the topic. Is Francis going to do this or not? I'm a Catholic farmer. I'm early to bed, early to rise. I don't make exceptions to bedtime. Okay, well, I can't explain the full thing in 5 minutes. I could probably do it in 20. He says yes, then no, then he winds up at yes. There, I did it in 5 seconds. He says yes, then no, then yeah. It's really, what takes longer to describe why he does that. And why he does it is because of your early bedtime, your short attention span, your unwillingness to stick through a seemingly aporetic problem. An aporetic problem is a seemingly insoluble one. It's not. He just knows that you will get cranky, not at him. You will get cranky at the skeptics, the me's out there, the Arroyos out there, the Father Jerry Murray's out there, the Robert Royals out there, the Taylor Marshalls out there, the Kennedy Halls. Everyone that's like, look, this is what he's doing. The Eric Salmons. You'll be like, guys, look, you were wrong. You're wrong. Just shut up and admit it. You're like, no, this is literally, you're playing into his hands, Normie. And they're like, nah, this is all cope. It's not cope. This is literally what he did. If it's cope, then tell me that Amoris Laetitia never happened. That's what's required for you to be able to call this all cope. It's not. Now, I told you specifically this business about there will not be, let me play another clip from the same show I did right before the synod opened. This is in September. To prove that I'm not coping, that I wasn't just saying this. Let's listen to this.
Top of the show. So Francis says one thing and does another. It's part of the way his weaponized ambiguity works. Remember that term? Monsignor Charles Pope, I think, is the one who coined it for the way that Francis and the Sankt Gallen Mafia agenda works. You haven't heard a lot about this, unless you're watching this show, in the last 3 or 4 years. It got out of fashion, didn't it? Well, even when something gets out of fashion, I keep with it if it's the truth.
Doggedly.
Weaponized ambiguity is the way Monsignor Charles Pope said that Francis works. He'll say something ambiguous, just like the Vatican II Council document said, true but ambiguous things, and expands on them praxeologically in the opposite direction later, because technically they were open. Francis has mastered that. Now, Francis, unlike the Vatican II documents, will actually contradict himself. Francis at times will literally say, no, I don't want to go with Casper. He's been doing it over the last 6 months. Like I said, that Disney special he put out, he told the girls there, you might get mad about it, but women can't be ordained.
This is a 2023 special. Disney put it out. He talked to 9 girls, 9 young people, and he told them, we're not going to do women deacons. That's why I've been telling you this all along. This Tuesday bombshell release is not a bombshell.
Well, let's talk about the much overlooked Amazon Synod in October of 2019. Always in October, these synods. There might be a reason for that. I find it fishy, symbolically fishy. In October of 2019, when the beer bug was breaking out, which kind of took over everything, it was expected heavily, and I'll mark this as a minor loss because I did have a bet on it with Eric Salmons and Steve Skojak, a public wager, that they would then codify at the October 2019 Amazon Synod female deacons and viri probati, meaning married priests in the Western tradition. They're not equally bad. The former is way worse and way more impossible than the latter. Married priest is not impossible. We have it in the Eastern rites. It's just, I think it's bad news, but I'm not nearly so concerned about that anymore. If they do married priests, given our...
By the way, I haven't heard a word about viri probati at Synod 23. You know what I said here before it opened? If they do it, it's not so bad. And that is why they left it behind. Viri probati isn't even doctrinally unsound. But I haven't heard a word out of this synod. I'll have to ask Diane or Ed personally. I haven't heard word one about viri probati, and well, like I just said here, if they do it, no big deal. Women deacons, that's a planet killer. That's a church backbreaker. LMNOP rule loosening. SS Union rule loosening. That's a planet killer. That's a church killer. And they're going for that.
Their list of concerns, whatever. But females can't be deacons, and Francis has been saying it, right? You've heard him say it, right? I'm talking about it now. That's what tells me I think he will go for female deacons.
Okay.
The way it's been all over Twitter, lefty priests are saying, we're going to do this. Everyone's guessing. Well, the reason the Amazon Synod, which was expected to take these two steps but didn't, is not a major win for the conservatives in the church who are saying, see, Francis will disappoint the left, disappoint his own crowd, turn them away forever. Instead of keeping the heretical proposition alive by footnote, which he did in 2016's Amoris Laetitia. Remember, he made that revolutionary gambit by footnote in Chapter 8, Communion for Divorced and Civilly Remarried. In 2019, 3 years later, the final document from the Synod kept the heretical notion of female deacons alive through an attachment to the final document. So footnote and attachment are very similar. They're not in the body text. But in an attachment, he said, this is a viable option or something like that. He said, we're not going to do it now. Beer bug was breaking out. It disrupted things. But we're gonna keep this alive, kick that can down the road a little more. Remember, in 2019, here are reasons he would have actually kicked the can down the road.
By the way, the attachment to the Amazon Synod doc directly contradicted the body text of the final document from the Amazon Synod. So even a document with its own attachment, Francis is willing to have direct contradiction, let alone his words in an interview from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, directly contradict his words on paper. That's a much easier change to make. A harder contradiction to countenance is, here's my document, A, and here's the attachment, B. A says yes, and B says no, and that's what we got from the Synod. Amazon Synod.
At its hottest. I mean, it was at its very hottest. This is when it was very fashionable to say the Pope used weaponized ambiguity. Pope is part of the Sankt Gallen Mafia, which is correct. I don't know if the Beneplanists are correct. I think more than likely they're wrong, but I don't think they're obviously wrong. We'll see later. But for now, I still think the Beneplanists are wrong. Those, like Julia Maloney, who advocate that Francis is part of something called a Gallen agenda, guys like Cardinal Casper, Cardinal Daniels, the late Cardinal Martini, most of these guys are the late now. There's about 10 of them that are well known. Bishop Ivo Führer, Basil Hume, another cardinal. This is just a slam dunk. The case is made 100%, right? I think the Benedictist crowd, Benedictist Pope crowd, whatever that became, Benedict was.
Okay, so the takeaway for you here is that I mean, I don't know if it's happening right now. I'm talking about how normies get sick of even a slight left-right juke, a slight propositional chicane, if you will, a quick left then a right. And that's precisely why Francis uses the propositional chicane, the left-right juke. That's why jukes work in basketball. You're probably happening right now. You're probably like, why are you talking about this, dude? We don't care. All we know is Tuesday this thing came out. I told you something like this would come out. I told you this is how Francis operates. I told you there still will be trouble through it all. Not because I want it. That's what the normies start saying. They get tired, so they start saying, oh, you want problem. No, I just know how he operates. It's not like, is Francis Pope? We can't know that. It seems like he might not be. We can't know. I've asked friends like Ed Mazza, Pat Coffin, hey, convince me, and they just can't do it. You can't know. We can know how Francis operates. Unless he's been converted by Our Lady of Fatima or Our Lady of Lourdes or something, behind the scenes, he seems to be using the exact same playbook, which would suggest otherwise. Then he's just going to do what he did in the double synod 2014-2015. And I even got specific. If any of you know which show I got specific in, I was looking this morning and I couldn't pull any more time. I had to go live. It was this show or the one before it or the one after it, the one that I'm pulling this from. September 30th, October 1st, 2nd, 3rd, maybe September the 28th. I say, here's specifically what Francis is going to do. Yes, he's going to use all the jukes, the propositional chicane, say no, then go yes. But what I said he'll do is, using the Amazon Synod, using the Amazon Rite for the way they ordain deacons there will be some ambiguous new type of ordaining females, or not ordaining them, non-ordained female deacons, but more important than the New Testament ones like Susanna and Joanna. A third way is what they're going to do, which is what Casper said he was going to do at the end of this interview. I'll find a third way. He didn't. He just did the old way, slightly renamed. They're going to do female deacons by some ambiguous hand placement of the wife of male deacons or something like that. I don't know exactly what it'll be because I'm not in the Sanctogallen Mafia. Something like that, where they'll roll it out and they'll be like, well, so no to strict ordained modern female deacons. That's closed. We're loyal sons of the church, like Casper said 5 times in this interview with Arroyo from 2015. They'll say that. But here's this new thing we do need to create. And all it'll be is a third type of deacon, not just a useless Susanna Joanna type Acts of the Apostles helper deacon. No, more important, more dignified than that. Remember, women need more dignity than what Jesus gave them. It won't be all the way to ordained deacon where the bishop's hand is laying over the head of a male deacon or whatever. But it'll be something in between them where, because of the principle of the excluded middle, you'll have to conceptually bump it up to real ordained deacon, whether they're calling it that or not, or just bump it down to deacon in the common sense of helper, like Susanna and Joanna. And all of us are going to know it's bumped up. And then 6 months, 9 months, 12 months later, Francis will say, yeah, that's basically all it is. It basically is ordained diaconate. That's the playbook. And I told you this would happen, and you probably don't believe me now, and that makes saying I told you so later sweeter. Sorry. That's just how it works.
What does Michael Scott say? How do you tell somebody you love, I told you so, with a rose?
Michael Scott says, how do you tell somebody you care about deeply without being petty? I told you so. With a rose? Is it arguably better just not to say it at all?
Because it'll just make things worse.
Because it'll only make things worse. Then he pauses and he goes, I think with a rose, right? Yeah, because I'm not pretending like Michael Scott pretends that I won't say I told you so. I will say I told you so when this happens, and then you'll be like, wow. I think even Michael Matt, who's on liturgy traddier than I am, I think even he might have fallen for this left-right juke. Because he was saying, wow, I guess we were wrong. I guess we were wrong. But, yeah, or maybe it wasn't Michael Matt. It was someone traddy I saw on Twitter, and they're people I normally agree with. I think it was Michael Matt, though. It was even like, wow, maybe we're wrong. So here's the capper on female deacons. I'll read to you my tweet. I said, in regard to female deacons, Francis's double synod formula, template 2014-2015 synods for revolutionary change, step 1, up to and at the first synod, signal clearly revolutionary change. Step 2, between the first and second synods, tell the world press revolutionary change was studied but rejected. At the second synod, step 3, revolution. And that's what Cardinal Casper says so clearly here. In June the 4th, 2015, in between synods, the way we're, for all intents and purposes, in between synods now, because we're at the General Assembly, Cardinal Casper is honest by admitting that Francis's synods, what they're used for, submitting a text which can get the approval of the whole council, he says, and then later expand on it. And he said, we did the same thing at Vatican II. He says that. But he's dishonest insofar as he pretends that he had exaggerated in 2014 by saying Pope Francis favored his proposal. He had not exaggerated, as 2016's Amoris Laetitia proved. Okay? Okay. So, we'll see. Gentleman's bet. I'd bet you a stake. They did not do all this for nothing. Francis and the left do not do all this for nothing. Now, 6 hours ago, just as the synod on Synod Thursday of the last week was concluding the General Assembly, so it's kind of post-synodal, whatever, it concluded, and the Vatican presser highlights, according to Michael Haynes on Twitter, what's billed as a key link between synodality and ecumenism. Cardinal Kurt Koch, prefect of the dicastery for the promotion of Christian unity, the furthest left of all the dicasteries, says of Synod 23 that the Catholic Church can learn a lot from ecumenism and how synodal process must be ecumenical. By the way, happy birthday to this future president. Can you see? It's Hillary. Remember in 2016 when she wished herself happy birthday? That was my favorite all-time tweet, and it's today. It's October 26th. She literally wrote, "Happy birthday to this future president," 10 days before she got shellacked and shell-shocked. And she wished happy birthday to herself and called herself a future president.
I'm surprised
Crazy
somebody
old
in her
bitch.
camp didn't say, like, my sister in Christ. This will backfire monumentously if you fail.
Take this down. She won't, though. Yeah, so I guess that's all I have. Michael Haynes also posted 2 days ago that Cardinal Schonborn tweet that Francis's death penalty charges in regard to possible future changes to the catechism show how the current catechism is a Trojan horse for Catholic doctrine, as Haynes explains in his book here. So this just proves Francis is really, really radical on... He doesn't care about the death penalty or the people that have suffered death at the hands of executioners. He was showing that let's go ahead and change the catechism because it's not magisterial, so let's flippantly change it. Like 20 years after the most recent change. There's a change in 93, a new catechism in 93. JP2 changed it in 97. The radicals, I think, got him to change it when he was kind of losing his mind. They got him to change it 4 years after a new catechism. There hadn't been a universal catechism in 450 years. And they got a change on the death penalty 4 years later. That paved the way for Francis about 20 years later to change the change. And now that you can change a change in the catechism, he's going to change it on LMNOP, which is quite a thing. And that, if you do the LMNOP stuff, he'll do the woman deacon stuff. It'll be a third way, the women deacons, which will really shove up to the first way a woman cannot be a deacon, except they'll say they can. It will not shove down conceptually, will not slide down to Susanna Joanna, casual sense of deacon. So nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. And I called all this. I said it all would happen. Happy birthday to this future president, 1026. Probably tomorrow, what I'd like to do is a debate debrief on the Trent Horn debate from last week. I'll have my CMask boys with me, and that's what I think I'm going to do. It's just a quick debrief, lining out some of the concepts, and we'll kind of talk about them, the four of us, because it's such a simple concept, proving Protestantism false in what I call the scholar's mate, the four-move checkmate. That is what I did to poor little Steve Christie. It was the scholar's mate, a 4-question checkmate. I'll review it once. Does the Bible have a single author or multi-authors? Is there a table of contents that's divinely inspired? Does this require a promulgation, or can that be skipped? And can you get an infallible promulgation, an inerrant promulgation from a non-infallible authority? 4-move checkmate. Ask all your Protestant friends that. You'll devastate them. And they'll start lying, as Steve Christie began lying about the councils of Florence and Trent. I'll explain all that tomorrow on the CMask, which will be on my channel. God bless you all. God be with us. Sign up for the ethics class on go to timothyjgordon.com, right? And sign up for it.
Yep.
Wednesday, November the 8th is when this free class, if you don't have the money to make an unrelated donation, totally free class. Wednesday, November the 8th, 8-week class. Teach you through all 10 books of the ethics. You need to know them. The next week, the Ask Your Husband Book Club meets every 2 weeks on Thursdays, not Wednesdays. And it's Steph teaching all 8 chapters of the Ask Your Husband Book Club. We've received what feels like 1,000 requests for her to do this. So go to timothyjgordon.com. Sign up for both of those. Go do it now. Go do that now. Those are 2 free classes. If you don't have the money to make an unrelated donation, totally free. God bless you all. Deus Vult.